Hello and welcome to the College of Lore. I'm your co-host, Anthony.
I'm your co-host, Josh.
Hey Josh, so last episode we talked about how to be a good dungeon master, game master. How about today we talk about how to be a good player?
Seems like a pretty good idea.
Seems logical.
Makes sense.
It's got two halves.
Yeah.
And you've got the third half of the coin, which is the edge around it. I think we'll have to think about something
a little
like
too
that
deep
for
for
the third
me.
episode.
We can do a podcast on it later.
Okay,
The third
let's talk
edge of
about...
the coin.
That is... Can we rebrand our podcast to be called The Third Edge of the Coin?
We have...
Is it too late?
Well, we have 5 viewers, and that's too many. Therefore, we gotta stick to the
No.
branding we've got.
All right. So, if I'm a good player, or if I want to be a good player, I think if we start chronologically from the beginning, you start in a game, you've accepted the mantle, so to speak, of playing in a Dungeons & Dragons game or a tabletop role-playing game. The first thing I think about, especially for D&D, especially for the type of games that I like to play in, is I'm going to think of my character concept and everything, and I'm going to think of a backstory for them.
Yeah.
How important would you say a backstory is?
I would say it's fairly important, more so, honestly, for the DM than for the player. It shows initiative, and it also gives the DM tools to work with to, in a chain of events, make the game more fun for everyone. Because if you have
Right.
a backstory, it shows that you're invested in the world and in your character, and then your GM has an opportunity to play off that.
Personally, I love coming up with a backstory as soon as I can, showing it to everyone in terms of page length and stuff, not showing them the intricacies, ins and outs of my character and all of their secrets, but just hey, look, wrote a 5-page backstory for my character.
Oh, so you're humble
You guys
bragging.
got going on. Yeah, no, totally. Because it increases everyone else's desire to come up with something interesting and neat.
Oh yeah, that's totally
for
why
them.
you do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
not to
Stroke
wave
my
your
own ego.
D20 around.
Yeah.
Your big old D20.
It's metal. It's heavy. It's got sharp edges.
When you roll a 20, it screams.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Man, this podcast got real weird real fast.
It did.
But back on topic. D20s aside. Yeah, backstory, it helps, like you said, motivate other players to be more invested in the world, and it gives you something to latch onto, because it's really hard to see something as important without an anchor point, and your backstory sort of solidifies your character's motives and their desires, wants, personality. And you might have all of that in your head, but as a GM, I prefer it written, because typically when something is written, it becomes more real and more concrete. It's psychology.
Oh, true. Yeah, I mean, the 5th edition character sheet has a spot on it for flaws, bonds, and ideals, but I mean, that's a good place to start, I guess, and you can roll that in the book. It shows how to create your character, and you can roll that if you want to go pure random, but then go from there and take those ideals, bonds, and flaws and kind of incorporate them into a backstory. Okay, they have a flaw. Why? How did this happen? When is it? How prominent is that flaw? Is it going to be something that you incorporate every time that you guys come together and play? Oh, there's money on the table, my character's going for it. That can be a little painful sometimes for your gaming group if your flaw is too overhyped. But if your backstory kind of makes it make sense, then it's not quite so terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also gives, when you were saying that it motivates other players, it also gives them something to play off of. So like you were saying earlier, if a character is super into money and is going for it, there might be another character who's, very Robin Hood-esque or very noble, and your personality and their personality might clash, and it creates drama. And drama's good. Drama is good for D&D, for the most part.
Yeah, drama makes a story interesting, but how can we take that drama and make it not annoying? There's so many times where I've been playing with someone and just because they really want to play up a certain aspect of their character for good roleplay, which is another thing that makes a good player, that investment, that roleplay into the game, it can sometimes come off a little too much. So talk with your group, talk with your dungeon master, make sure that you're portraying the idea that you've created for your character within their backstory well enough to the rest of the group. So you can go after the money. It becomes a huge problem. Maybe your group spends a night in jail for the chaos that they've caused in town. But after they come out of the jail, or maybe while they're in the jail cell, maybe they have that little talk together and they're like, look, man, we can get money, but we got to go about it smart. And then all of a sudden, your character, your gaming group's working together to make sure everyone's happy and everyone's playing their character and everyone's portraying those different things that they want, getting the things that they want out of the game, but working together at the same time and not working against each other.
Yeah. In addition, I think that this sort of segues into a topic where while there is drama and your character might have conflict with other characters, you should work with your GM and other players to create a character that, for the most part, plays along well in group scenarios and with the party.
How would you do that?
Well, the common example that people often make, or the common mistake that people often make, is I'm a chaotic neutral rogue and I'm going to pickpocket my party. And then when you're hit up from the group and saying, "Hey, you're being a jerk," the group the response from the rogue is typically, "Oh, I'm just playing my character how he would act," and it's
I don't know you guys. I just met you. That's what my character just did.
Yeah, and it's sort of an excuse. The problem with that is, while that might be a viable, like, real answer with honesty behind it, it doesn't play along well with the group. The whole point of the game is to have fun, and your rogue can learn and change and mature, and it's not something you shouldn't create a character who is literally just a dick for no reason all the time. It is a group party game. If people start dying, you're probably going to die too.
True. I've seen power creeps like that where the fight seems to be going along great. All of a sudden, one person in the party dies. Bam. It's flipped, The tables are turned almost instantly. It'll go from an even fight to not an even fight. So if you're being a good player, you kind of want to protect the interest of the group.
Yeah, and if you're creating an edgier player, someone who is like that, and you really want this to be an important part of their aspect, talk to your group, talk to your GM, see if this works for this particular campaign. Maybe everyone is running chaotic evil people, and it's understandable. Though generally my advice would be to avoid counterintuitive roleplay with other party members. Like, if you're going to be a pickpocket, that's fine, but steal from people who harm you or are bad, or people who aren't in your party. Yeah. Typically, because then it just ends up to being this dominoes that it just brings everyone else down, and then in the end, no one's having fun because everyone's angry, and then why are you playing this game?
On the same token, you have someone who's like lawful stupid and is going around like preventing everyone's fun. If everyone at the table is a little tricksy and they want to go around and do whatever they want and cause chaos, and the one person in the game wants to play a paladin of, I always say chaotic stupid, but I think if I kind of delve into that a little bit further, is someone who doesn't understand the tenets that their character is subscribed to. Someone who's just like only good all the time, always, and if it's not good, it's bad, and if it's bad, I have to kill it. So in that same aspect, you have someone who can go around and, purely for the sake of roleplay, want to smite their entire party, and that just doesn't work in a team game.
Yeah, and if you run into problems like that, you should probably have talked with your party earlier to avoid this conflict in the first place, to make sure this character works.
Right.
And even if there is problems in the beginning, like let's say your character is, the good guy in a group of rogues and evil cultist clerics, maybe they corrupt him. Be open to the idea of your character eventually changing personalities, because the people they hang around typically are the people that they're going to be influenced by.
Sometimes when I'm writing a character, I'll have already written how I want them to go and not how they started out. Well, I'll have like a little bit about that, but it's progression. It's slow. Sometimes change is slow, sometimes change is quick. One thing I learned about being a good player that I've done in the past is I've kept a secret from the group. And I had this whole secret about why my character was like this, and he wouldn't talk and he was shy, which, that's kind of hard to play in a game. You can talk in and out of character with your party and see how they're responding to your character. So if I have a shy character, instead of role-playing the fact that he's shy and not talking at the table, I'll go more into like scratching at his face and kind of like you see him like covering like one half of his face every time he talks, and he's like, oh god, there's a lot of people around. You see him like he's totally not comfortable with all this. That's another way that people can kind of like see how your character is in the world and bring life to your character without necessarily going against your own roleplay. But don't keep secrets. Like I had this character, he was shy, he kept secrets, and then he died the next session. So he never got to grow as a character. He never got to have everyone have that big reveal that I think everyone kind of always expects there to be like a huge reveal for their character and very cinematic. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you die at level 2 in a dungeon inside of a snow globe.
That's true. And that just kind of sucks. Sometimes you don't get the satisfaction. But in that regard, don't make asshole characters. And if you do make asshole characters, make sure the rest of your party and game master are okay with it.
Yeah.
Because in the end, the whole point of this game is to have fun. So make sure, so to make sure, you're working together with them so that you can all have fun. Which I guess would bring us to the topic of gatekeeping in general.
So what's gatekeeping?
So gatekeeping is typically when there is someone who is excluded from a group in regards to the knowledge or who they are as a person. Gatekeeping doesn't apply just to D&D. It can apply to people who are new to whatever they're about to do versus people who are experienced. It could be their gender, their race. It's a lot of things basically keeping you from enjoying the game because of who you are.
So if I was playing in a game, or I wanted to, I come up to a group of people, and I'm like, hey, can I play in your game? And they said no. Is that gatekeeping? Or is it more like you're in the game, and then the party has a bunch of in-jokes, and they're not like letting you roleplay your character. They're shutting you down every time you try to do something in combat or social situations. Is that kind of more gatekeeping?
I think it could be both. An example that's commonly used is generally the nerdy community unfortunately has the negative stigma of very obese, overweight people who don't take care of themselves, typically male. This is a male-dominated society, unfortunately. And where, let's say a female wants to play. They'll automatically assume that she doesn't know what she's doing, that she's just here on some sort of facade or agenda. And when she does try to have fun and roleplay, the more experienced players will, like you said, shut her down, second guess her choices, ridicule her basically to the point where she's not having fun or feels incredibly uncomfortable. And this is considered gatekeeping because it's someone who wants to be in the community who is being rejected for not real reasons. They're not being a jerk, they're not being a dick. It's just the party is being a dick.
Okay. So if there's someone new and I want to like teach them the rules and stuff and like help them, I should do it in a way maybe either outside of game, or I should like ask them if they want my help before I go and just assume that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's really important to offer a level of support that isn't too intrusive because they may not feel comfortable, but also let them know that you have their back, or inform the GM, because sometimes that's all they really need. If the GM is in a position of authority to make calls and such. So if you see a player gatekeeping, call them out. Like, hey, don't do that. Don't don't be that guy. She's new to the game. He's new to the game. They're trying to learn. We want people in our community. We want it to grow.
Yes.
Why wouldn't we? The more people, the merrier.
Absolutely. So yeah, talking with your party in and out of game, talking with your dungeon master to make sure that, if you ever have any problem with a character personally in a game that's making you feel uncomfortable, if it happens like twice, maybe it's a good time to say, sorry guys, I'm gonna take a break from this. I'll be back later. And then, don't force yourself to stay in a situation that's uncomfortable for longer than you need to. And then see if you can talk with people inside or out of game, however best you determine if there's an uncomfortable situation that you're in. Unfortunately, in this game of make-believe and roleplay, there can be topics discussed that either people aren't comfortable with or it's, very traumatic for them. So communication outside of game, hey, what type of game do you guys want to play? Hey, what's going to kind of go on in this game? Just so you know, I'm like looking for a high adventure fantasy setting where I get to be the hero, or like I'm looking for a horror game where I'm beaten at every turn and it's scary. It's got a lot of weird stuff in it. Or I'm looking for a sci-fi game where it has a lot of technological mumbo jumbo and stuff like that. Like talk with everybody, including your game master inside and out of game, and especially if there's a situation that has made you uncomfortable.
Yeah. A reoccurring pattern in this, guys, is obviously to communicate with your group. Communication is key. If you've got something that triggers you, let the DM know so he doesn't throw it in the throw it in the campaign. Or if the DM is running a really hardcore, dark dystopian type world, and you don't think you can handle, how dark and depressing it may get, then bounce out. Join another group or wait. It's better to not play than not have fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's been times where I'll say like, yeah, I can totally hang with this game, and in reality, maybe I wasn't having as much fun as I could have been having. But I think I made kind of the right choice when I was running in the Stoneplay game that you had going on, Josh, was sticking with it, because you had a lot of opportunities. You had like a really good balance of, yes, you've described the scenario and the situation as something that's like really tough, but also there were a lot of cool moments where we were able to like save some people or find out, super interesting things that we didn't quite understand. And those moments I look back on and I'm like, yeah, I was totally having fun. I really loved that moment, and it kind of made it all worth it. Like the pacing, perfect.
Well, thanks, buddy. Oh yeah. Outside of communication, though, with your group, it is also important to be prompt when it comes to your games. Typically, I like to consider playing and GMing more like a job than a game, in the fact that I am on time, and if I can't make it, I let my DM know ahead of time.
Very true. Yep. Sometimes you'll be driving on your way there. Kind of hard to get a message across, but in today's age of technology, you can totally just ask your phone to make a phone call while you're driving, and it'll probably do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can definitely make sure that you're on time and you don't lag and prevent anyone else from having fun.
Yeah, and if you can't make it to a game, I would say let your DM or GM know as soon as possible, because it gives them a chance to sort of rewrite the session. If an encounter is too hard and you tell them the last minute, it puts more pressure on them, especially when they're losing a party member for the game. Or if someone else cancels, there might be not enough people to run the game at all, so they can call it off, instead of having, 2 people show up and then they're just like, well, okay, now what? So communicate with your DM. Yeah, communicate with your DM. If you can't make it, let them know. If you're going to be late, let them know. There's no harm. It takes no time. It's common courtesy, honestly. You would do it for a friend if you weren't playing. Like if it was a party or an event or a gathering or a lunch or dinner or second breakfast.
I'm hungry.
I would like to eat food.
Okay. Let's take a 20-minute break and we'll be right. No. Yeah, I was trying to poorly transition that last bit into talking about talking without interrupting. Like, everyone is so eager in this game of role-playing to communicate and talk and say something. But you should be equally as want to listen. Improv is actually more listening than it is talking, I found out.
I strongly agree with that. There is sort of a silver lining, especially because while people are prone to not listening as much, typically you also don't want to just sit there and be drowned out for the pacing. So typically what I will do when role playing is I'll try and give someone who's talking a couple seconds of silence before I come in, so I can make sure that they're done speaking or had their say or whatever they're doing. That way it's not too awkward, but you're also not interrupting anyone. Especially since when you're listening, it gives you more time to think about what they're saying, instead of just like waiting for your turn it lets you listen to the world around you as opposed to just being so focused on yourself.
Yeah, that's true. That's something I'm working on in real life and in game, so I've had that opportunity. But yeah, I'll always try to like include people while we're playing. All right, it seems like we need to head west. Does anyone have any objections? Is there something we could do east? And then like call out players by name. Player number 1, are you sure we should go west? Is there anything else we need? What are you worried about? Like, let me get inside your head.
Yo, I actually really appreciate that as a DM. That a player who includes other players in their decision making is a player that I enjoy very much so. While you are, let's say, typically playing a party leader, you don't have to just be like, we're doing this, we're doing that. You don't need to make the group decision for everyone. People will have different opinions, and they might be better than yours, so why not include them? It also pushes the party dynamic, and people who work together will enjoy each other's company more. That's just typically how it goes. So thank you for that, Tony.
Oh, you're welcome, Josh. I think the best leaders delegate, I've found out. They find the person who's the best at doing something, and they let them do it.
Yeah, and that way, you get to lead. The leader gets to lead, so they feel good, and then the guy who's doing the job feels good about doing his job because everyone.
And the party feels good because they don't get lost in the forest for a million years.
That's true. The party wouldn't get lost if they bought a map or asked for a map or just
Maps
brought
exist in this
anything.
time period?
Yeah,
Oh,
actually,
wow.
maps do exist in the medieval fantasy high magic age of time. Wild.
That is wild. I guess I should have respected the world and the time a little better.
Maybe. Or, the fact that the GM did mention that you don't have a map like 6 times. But in regards to listening, it also helps in combat as well. A good player will listen and plan out their move before it's their turn.
Oh, true.
Yeah, it's actually really annoying as a DM to get through a round of combat, and then it's your turn, and then they're like, all right, it's player Tony's turn, and Tony's like, what?
Huh?
And you're just like, did you just miss
All right,
everything?
So what happened?
And then you have to
why
repeat
is everyone
everything.
moved around?
Yeah, and that's really annoying. So when it's not your turn, you should be listening and planning your next attack. So when it does become your turn, you know what you're doing. You know what the spell that you're doing is going to be. It doesn't interrupt the pacing of the game, especially since combat is supposed to be fast because it's real life combat, like 6 seconds of time. Your DM will love you if you are ready and are paying attention when it's not your turn.
There was this one fight that I had when Juan was running the game, and I was a wizard, and I had like 6 combat steps planned out with all my spells and everything that I was going to do and who I was going to buff and where they probably were going to be and like how the setting and the geography might have changed over time if there was like going to be like an earthquake or something, because it was like this catastrophic level event that was happening. I had 6 to 7 combat steps planned out, and then I'm like, all right, if we don't kill him in 7 combat steps, I'm dead because
I'm out of spells and I'm a wizard.
Wizard life.
It's things like that make the DM happy. So pay attention. Don't be on your phone unless you're looking up a spell. Think about what you're going to do next, because it is actually my personal pet peeve when I get to you and you're like, what? Because players who play with me frequently know that I will not repeat what happened, because it bothers me that much. And
dang,
for you to not pay attention outside a game that's your
fault.
Story.
I worked on it for so long.
Exactly. So pay attention.
I charged the wizard directly into the flaming sphere. Okay, I guess.
I actually had an encounter a long time ago that I designed where these people were being.
Story?
This is the bear trap story.
Yes,
it's a famous story. So I actually had a group of people. They were tracking this other party of NPCs, and the NPCs were intelligent. So what they would do when they camped out at night is they would put out bear traps around their perimeter. We had the party come up, and the rogue of the party actually came up and scouted the bear traps. He rolled high enough on his perception. He saw the traps. I said, there are traps here, 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 here. I put them on the grid. And over here, there's the campfire with the people, and they do not see you. He wasn't seen. He rolled a high stealth check. So he's like, okay. So they're trying to sneak up on this party. He tells his party, the rest of the party, the bear traps are here, 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 and here. And I even did them a favor, and I marked it on the map that they had.
Wow.
But one of the players wasn't paying attention and during combat literally stepped into the bear trap because she wasn't paying attention to when I told her there are bear traps here. And she was like, oh, snap. The party almost died because 2 players had to help her get out of it during combat because the traps were actually bolted to the ground, so you actually could not move. And then when she got out of it, she stepped into another one that was marked on the map. And that was the most infuriating combat session for me and my players. And it was because one person was not paying attention.
Did you roll a percentile to see if it landed on the same leg?
I did not. But it didn't matter because they couldn't move. So it was just really sad. It was really frustrating. The entire combat was
no joke.
Yeah, it was not meant to be a difficult encounter, but it was. They I think 2 of them got knocked out.
Jesus.
Because of this scenario where one person decided that they were going to be on their phone.
Hey, what's that X on the map? Nah, I'll end my turn there.
Yeah, pretty much. That's literally what happened. And everyone was like screaming at her, like, "What are you doing?" And yeah, and in game rules, I actually set it up to where, you know, when you make a move, you don't take it back. Like, that's how it is. You can't. Oh, I didn't know that. No, you didn't. But it's battle and it's hectic, and that's on you to be aware and keep track of things.
So you have like chess rules to where like you take your hand off the pawn and then it's done?
Yes, that's pretty much how I run my games. But I communicate that with my players, and they're okay with it in the beginning. Like, that's how I always run it.
Mm-hmm.
For newer players, typically I won't do that, but eventually I'll ease them into it. So
okay.
I'm fair about my rulings.
So that's a good way of when you have a game set up and you want to do something that's good and you're communicating. Most of the time it's like majority rules, like how are we going to run this type of game? You know, what type of setting are we going to do? Mostly it's majority rules. Sometimes you might find like a little smidge, like this player wants some sci-fi, everyone else wants high adventure. Okay, there's like, you know, you stare into a crystal ball and you see like another dimension in space, and like, if possible, you guys could take this high fantasy game to like a moon base or something. And you can ease certain aspects of things in there, but most of the time it's majority rules. But like you said, you ease the new player into it, and that's kind of like going back to the communication.
And they might not be the style necessarily for every DM, but that's typically how I run it. I'm very like, this is how I want to run the game, and if not, or if I'm feeling generous, I'll have a majority rule. But in my opinion, everything really comes down to the GM because he's writing it. If he doesn't want to do it, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether he decides to ask the opinion of the party is up to him, really.
Mm-hmm. It's like asking, like, what type of movie do you want to go see? Like, I can choose to go see any type of movie I want. I can't go in the movie and say, oh, well, I really don't like the way you wrote this part of the movie. Can you rewrite it? That's kind of...
Do you do that, Tony?
I do. No one listens when I'm talking into the darkness of a movie theater.
It's not like you go with anyone, right? Cause...
No. I have gotten thrown out a few times.
Just a few. But that's a good segue into, you know, respecting the world. Paying attention is just as much respect as the decisions that you make as a player. So your GM puts a lot of time into the world and universe that they created or they're running. They might not necessarily have made it themselves, but they're running it. And it's a lot more time typically than the player. So as a good player, you should respect that.
Picking up the vibe that you're putting down for the world, it's like high fantasy adventure, and I'm kind of like pretending to be in that time. I'm role playing in that time. I'm, you know, like how can I best respect the world?
I think the way that I typically go about it is I engage with the world in a way that's realistic. There are a lot of people who just kind of want to poke everything because they think it's fun, or they want to murder everything because they can murder things in this game, but they can't do it in real life, and it's fun. I mean, pretending to be chaotic crazy is fun. You know, being a murder hobo is fun. Yeah. But then when there are consequences to the actions, they freak out. So respect the world, respect that it's supposed to be a living, breathing thing that your DM has created, and the actions that you do will have consequences. So not everything you do can be 100% stupid, you know? You can murder everyone, but do it methodically, in a way that makes sense.
Oh god, it's not like Skyrim where you can just quick save and then go ahead and kill everyone and then reset the world. There's no reset button in D&D, or there shouldn't be. Anyway.
Yeah, and if your GM, put a lot of time into like a boss encounter or an NPC encounter, don't shit all over their
Yeah.
moment. They're proud of their writing. Go with it. Even if it's not something that you 100% enjoy, or the way it was written, it's not something that you're super into. Think about your friend who put time into this for you, and try and make the moment memorable as possible. Don't just, I'm bored, and then you just kill the NPC that's giving you quest info. Like, you wouldn't do that in real life. No one does that. Not even dicks. Dicks don't even do that.
Not even sociopaths don't do that.
Yeah. So respect that your DM is putting time into the game for you, and treat the world like something that you would respect.
And don't be surprised when it happens. So, like, when the bad guy's giving his speech, should I let him monologue, or should I, like, shoot an arrow at him?
I actually think that depends on the DM. Typically, when a NPC for my games is narrating, or it's sort of like a mini cutscene. He's monologuing, you're listening. You don't get to react till afterwards, and then in which case you can say, "Oh, mid speech, I'm gonna do this thing," but you still heard the speech, so I'm okay with it.
Okay, yeah. Maybe, I spent, like, 16 hours working on this description of a city. I'll let you read it, just because that, like, paints the picture. So, when the DM's talking, when another player is talking, when the NPC is talking, wait until that moment, until after they finish, before you interrupt them right in the middle of their speech.
That ties back into not talking over other players and waiting for your turn. And that goes for the GM too, which is actually more authoritative than a player. So if your GM's talking and he's describing the world or the NPC narrative, don't talk. Let him finish. And then you can do your things. I mean, you're playing most of the game anyway, so you can wait 10 seconds for him to finish talking.
When you're playing the game, namely you're playing for yourself, but there's also an audience as well, right? There's the team effort all together working towards creating this narrative of this group storytelling, something that you can go back and remember for time upon end. How do you work together as a team and not only create something that you want and your character wants, but something that your party wants altogether?
I think that in character, you may not necessarily start off with this mentality. So typically, if characters don't know each other, they're out for themselves. But you can roleplay that over time, your characters are working together. They become friends, they learn each other's motives, and you're killing things with each other. That usually builds a pretty strong bond. So then you can be like real people, supportive of each other's goals, lift each other up, teamwork, If you're fighting a Hydra, good luck doing that by yourself. It's got like 7 heads. So work together, think of a plan, and then the rest sort of just takes care of itself, honestly. You do enough things together, and those things work, that's gonna point you in the right direction of good teammate.
Yeah. As a player, I mean, I'm always I just met this group of adventurers, and, the very first session that we all played together, I want to be friends with all of them, because I've played in games where they've been antagonistic to each other, and that kind of works, but overall it's like, why are we hanging out together if we all hate each other? So I always, like, one of, like, the unspoken rules is, like, don't split the party and don't hate the party. Like, you're all working together. So getting that to work in a narrative standpoint can sometimes be challenging, but I think if you kind of talk with everyone in and out of character and say, like, I think, maybe by a certain point we trust each other to work together is a good goal, but like how do you do that without forcing it?
Well, honestly, I actually think that's largely part of the GM's job. The DM's job when throwing people in who don't have connected backstories is to create a motive for everyone to connect through. So if everyone needs this X artifact, they may all have different reasons to get the artifact, but the artifact is there and they all need it. That is the written job of the GM, to create a motive for each of them that they can connect over. They all need it, so they all need to work together to get it. And then where they go from there is up to them. And then, ultimately, once that's settled, they have rapport with each other, so they can choose the roleplay that they want to keep going together. Yeah. But that is something that you would communicate with your GM as well, because you can't really create a motive out of thin air in a world that you haven't played in yet. That's up to them.
Right. Money's usually the biggest thing. Like, no one leaves their house one day and like, you know what? I'm gonna kill monsters for money. No sane person does that. There has to be like
That's true.
a very specific adventure archetype.
Adventurers have a 95% fatality rate.
Adventurers' moms have a 95% fatality rate. All the tragic backstories I've created.
That's true. All these burned down villages seeking revenge. Ugh.
How many bandits can there be?
Hey man, it's medieval fantasy. There are a shit ton of bandits.
Guess, yeah. They're just, maybe bandits are just adventurers gone wrong.
Maybe. I'll furiously take notes.
Maybe you're the bandit the whole time.
How can our bandits be real if our
our cities aren't real? Well, here's the thing about D&D. Nothing's real, but everything is at the same time.
Whoa.
Deep, huh?
You know, being a good player is really not that hard. As long as you show, drive and initiative, write that backstory, be invested in your own character, have fun with yourself and the other players.
Want to be there.
Yeah, the only thing that's really required is to want to have fun with everyone else. That is sort of the all-encompassing thing. Everything else, like you said, falls into place.
Okay. That's a load off my plate then, because I really sometimes stress out about wanting to be a good player. I mean, this is something that we're all committing like 4 hours a week of our lives to go ahead and create this story together, and I want to make sure everybody has fun. I want to make sure we're all working together. I want to make sure people keep showing up and that the group stays together in and out of character, that everyone, looks forward to D&D and like, man, I can't wait until next D&D. I can't wait until we all get together again and play. It's so fun.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, a GM's fun comes from a player's fun. So as long as you guys are having fun, everyone's having fun and everyone wins.
True.
And that's really what the game is about, is having fun. And also giving your players things to sweat over.
Oh god, I love ending on a cliffhanger, especially when you have like 2 weeks of downtime or whatever. Oh man, that is...
Well, speaking of cliffhangers, next episode we're going to be talking about... Oh wait, that's the bell. I guess we'll call it...
Alright, you guys can leave. Make sure to do your homework. Turn it in. The homework is to have fun.
This has been the College of Lore. I am your co-host, Josh.
And I'm Anthony. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.